The moment I opened my eyes, I was tied up like a trussed chicken and forced to kneel in the ancestral hall, blood streaming down my forehead, surrounded by villagers holding torches and ready to beat me to death. They said I had seduced my sister-in-law and deserved to die 1,000 deaths. The team leader gave me two choices: either have my leg broken or go to Beast Mountain as a mountain watcher and die there. I laughed and chose the second. In my previous life, this was where I ended up lame for the rest of my life. And now that I've finally been reborn in this life, no fucking way is anyone laying another finger on me. The night wind blew through the ancestral hall's broken wooden doors, making the flames on the torches flicker on and off. Two burly men pinned my arms behind my back and forced me to kneel on the ground. Blood from my forehead ran down past my brow bone, and the salty, metallic smell mixed with dirt and filled my nose. It hurt. My head felt like someone had smashed it with an iron hammer. I tried to struggle a little, but the rope bit into the flesh of my wrists, burning hot. Shin-san, you piece of trash. Seducing your own sister-in-law? You're a fucking beast. A bald man held up a torch and roared at me, spittle spraying onto my face. There were people everywhere. Men and women, young and old, all holding torches, surrounded me in the middle, their faces twisted and distorted in the firelight. He hasn't stopped harassing the young widow in the village. Beat him to death. Beat him to death. The curses came crashing over me like a tidal wave. Squinting, I saw a woman kneeling 5 steps away. Her hair was in disarray, the left side of her face swollen high, and her eyes were empty, like a puppet that had had its soul sucked out. Her clothes had been torn to shreds, exposing large patches of snow-white skin. My mouth was dry. I swallowed instinctively. Something was off. Wasn't I fishing at my villa? My foot slipped. I fell into the lake. And then what? Why did this scene look so familiar? Whitestone Village Ancestral Hall, torches, ropes, woman. I suddenly shuddered. Shin-san. That was the name I used when I was young. When I was 19, I was almost beaten to death in the Ancestral Hall. Had I been reborn? I went back 40 years. Shin-san, do you have anything to say for yourself? An old man with a grizzled beard stepped forward. Hu Daquan, the brigade leader of Whitestone Village, a man whose word was law in the village. The onlooking villagers immediately fell silent. Today, you were caught red-handed, and you've dragged the entire Chin family's name through the mud. Hu Daquan clasped his hands behind his back, sighed, and raised his right hand. The two burly men swung up clubs as thick as an arm. Wait, I shouted. My head was buzzing, but I was crystal clear about one thing in my previous life. It was in this very ancestral hall that they broke one of my legs, leaving me crippled for life. And I limped for the rest of my days. Let's talk this out. Nobody's perfect. Who among us has never made a mistake? Hu Daquan narrowed his eyes and stared at me for a long moment. Shin-san, 2 choices. First, we deal with you according to the ancestors' rules. Second, Beast Mountain needs someone sent up this year, and they're short a mountain watcher. The villagers nearby immediately started murmuring. Send him to Beast Mountain? Isn't that just sending him to his death? The last mountain watcher was surrounded by a herd of wild boars and died in the mountains without anyone even knowing. Beast Mountain. I knew that mountain. In the memories of later generations. It was a hunter's paradise and a desperado's grave. But I knew one thing even more clearly in another 2 months. I was going up that mountain, and my biggest regret in this life was that in my previous life, I never got to do what I truly wanted to do at the best stage of my life. I choose the second. Shut up. 3 people burst in through the ancestral hall entrance, drenched in sweat from running. It was my father, Chin Igwa, my second brother, Chin Yang, and Uncle Chun from next door. Captain Hu, no matter how worthless my boy is, you can't just beat him to death. The ancestors' rules are dead. The organization won't allow you to take lives so recklessly either. My father was breathing heavily, his eyes filled with barely restrained anger. Hu Daquan narrowed his eyes. Old Chin, people aren't made of stone. If what he did weren't so immoral, how would it have come to this? My father was choked into silence. Chin Yang hurried over in a few steps to untie me and cursed at me in a low voice. Are you out of your mind? You dare go to a place like Beast Mountain? Brother, I asked to go there myself. I looked at him seriously. Chin Yang froze. He had probably never seen such a solemn expression on my face. My father looked at me with a dark expression and said coldly, then let him go die. After we left the ancestral hall, Chin Yang supported me as we walked home. When we passed, that woman collapsed on the ground. I said quietly, Brother, aren't you going to help her up? Chin Yang slapped the back of my head. You beast. That's our cousin's fiancée, and you still dare mess with her? When he gets back, he'll carve you into a human stick. It hurt, but I didn't make a sound. In my previous life, I really did a lot of bastard things. I lost a bet with Zhao Ergu from the end of the village. and climbed into someone's courtyard in the middle of the night, only to be caught red-handed. I couldn't explain myself. Serve me right. By the time I got back to the Chin family courtyard, it was already completely dark. The mud brick house and earthen walls looked exactly the same as in my memory. It wouldn't be demolished and rebuilt for another 7 or 8 years. Standing at the courtyard gate, an indescribable feeling suddenly welled up in my heart. Third, a woman with a headscarf tied around her head rushed out of the house, steadying herself on the doorframe, her face pale. It was my mother, Chunmei. She had fallen ill on the Kong from anger and anxiety over what happened to me. You little wretch. I told you not to run wild. If something happened to you, how are we supposed to bear burying our own child in our old age? She threw herself at me and hugged me, crying. My nose stung. In my previous life, my parents died early, and I didn't even get to see them one last time. Mom, I'm fine. I patted her on the back. The whole family sat together in the courtyard. My father sat on a stone stool smoking his pipe, and through the smoke his brows were knotted tightly together. Tell me then, if you want to die so badly, I might as well beat you to death right now. You disgraceful thing. Dad, I know I was wrong, I said. From now on I'll truly turn over a new leaf and properly honor you both in your old age. The pipe in my father's hand paused. He turned his head to look at my mother, then at Qin Yang, wearing an expression like he'd seen a ghost. What did you say? I said that from now on I'll behave and be a decent person. The courtyard fell silent for a few seconds. My father knocked his pipe against the stone table and said nothing more. But I knew he didn't believe me. The Qin San of my previous life stole chickens and dogs and loafed around. Even the village dogs despised him. And now I was suddenly saying I wanted to turn over a new leaf. Who would believe that? It didn't matter. I would make them believe. I woke up before dawn the next day. The wound on my forehead had already scabbed over, and my head was still a little groggy, but much better than yesterday. In the big iron pot on the clay stove in the kitchen, some cornmeal flatbreads were being kept warm. I grabbed two and took a big bite. It nearly choked me. The flatbread got stuck in my throat and scraped it raw. I turned and scooped up a ladle of water to gulp down before I could barely swallow it. Then I stuffed 2 more flatbreads from the pot into my pocket and went to the storage room to rummage for things. A hatchet, traps, a chisel, rope, flint. I stuffed them all into my shoulder bag. After wrapping my leggings, I quietly pushed open the front gate. The sky at the horizon was just beginning to lighten, and the air carried the chill of dew. I took a deep breath. Nameless Mountain. In my previous life, Chindahai and I had dug out beehives and caught rabbits on this mountain. I knew it so well I could walk it with my eyes closed. But back then it was for fun. Now it was different. In my previous life, my father had an accident at the asbestos factory and lost a finger. After that, he started coughing every night. With no money for treatment, he simply grew sick and died. My mother didn't hold on much longer after that either. There was no way I could let this happen again in this life. And Beast Mountain. In another 2 months, I'd have to go up the mountain. I needed a gun. In this era, guns weren't banned, and with a firearm by my side, going up the mountain would be a bit safer. But guns had to be bought with money. So right now, I first needed to get some money. After walking for 2 hours, I finally reached the foot of Nameless Mountain. The elevation wasn't too high, around 800 to 900 meters, but the trees were dense and lush. In the golden autumn season, it was still hot at noon, and there were plenty of mosquitoes, snakes, and ants. Relying on my memory, I felt my way toward the southwest. The wild rabbit burrow was nearby. A rabbit's intelligence is about the same as a 3-year-old human child's, and its hearing and sense of smell are both sharp. At the slightest disturbance, it bolts. A crafty rabbit has 3 burrows. Once a rabbit runs back, it's basically impossible to catch. I lightened my steps, crouched low, and stared at a clump of weeds 100 meters ahead. Rustle, rustle. Something was moving. I pulled out the rope and started setting snares. 7 or 8 rope loops were scattered around places where wild rabbits often appeared. The more this kind of snare struggles, the tighter it gets. The rope can't be too thick. If it is, a rabbit's lower leg can slip free. After setting the traps, I saw it was still early, so I walked farther into the mountain. As I walked, my steps suddenly halted. On the ground was a pile of dried animal droppings. I crouched down to examine it. Black, oval-shaped lumps. I leaned in and smelled it. There was a foul stench. Judging from the experience of my later life, it was probably the droppings of an omnivorous bird of prey. I stood up and glanced toward the northwest. Then, without hesitation, strode over. I looked around and carefully inspected the area. No beehive. I remembered that in my previous life, Chindahai had dug out a big beehive somewhere around here. Still unwilling to give up, I searched around again. Sure enough, on a steep rock face, I spotted an enormous beehive hanging there, about the size of a wash basin. My heart leapt with joy. Taking a beehive is skilled work. Nearby, I gathered a large pile of half-dry, half-damp branches and weeds, bundled them into several bunches, lit them with a flint, placed them beneath the hive, and then tossed a handful of sand and dirt upward. Thick smoke billowed upward. I threw down the grass bundle and turned to run. Buzz, 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 a swarm of bees chased after me. Fortunately, I was wearing long sleeves and pants. I pulled up my sleeves to cover half my face, running while swatting at the bees that caught up to me. After waiting 15 minutes, the hive on the rock face had been smoked pitch black, and only a few bees were flying sparsely around it. The moment had come. I aimed a forked branch at the hive and jabbed it fiercely. Bang! The entire hive, along with a chunk of rock from the cliff face, came tumbling down and shattered into several pieces on the ground. Enduring the pain of the stings, I rushed over, scooped up the larger pieces of honeycomb and stuffed them into my arms, then ran down the mountain. The sun was sinking in the west. When I pushed open the gate to the Chin family courtyard, my father was standing in the middle of the yard, his face as black as the bottom of a pot. "Where did you go?" "Up the mountain." I dumped all the honeycomb in my arms onto the bluestone slab. My mother lifted the door curtain and came out. When she saw the table full of honeycomb, her eyes widened into perfect circles. "Third son, did you dig this out all by yourself?" She came closer to look at my face. My forehead and cheeks had several lumps as big as quail eggs from the stings, and bits of grass were still stuck in my messy hair. My father stared at me with a dark expression for a long while. "You went up the mountain today? Dug out a beehive?" He probably wanted to scold me, but when he saw that pile of honeycomb weighing at least 20 or 30 gene, the words circled at his lips and were swallowed back down. At dinner, my father picked up a chopstick full of wild greens and, without even raising his head, said, "I asked your eldest uncle to pull some strings. In a while, I'll send you over there." I knew he meant sending me to stay with my eldest uncle. "I'm not going." I shoveled a mouthful of rice into my mouth. Smack. My dad slammed his chopsticks on the table. "If I say you're going, then you're going. I'm not discussing it with you." "Dad, I want to go hunting." "You think digging out one beehive makes you a hunter? Give me a month." I looked up at him. "1 month, let's see whether I can really do it." My dad didn't say a word. Chin Yang spoke up from the side. "Dad, why not give Shaosan a chance to try?" My dad picked up his bowl, then put it down again. "Suit yourself." That was his tacit approval. That night, my mom used the freshly collected honey to make each of us 3 a big bowl of honey water. Sweet. I drained it in one gulp and felt comfortable all over. 20 gene of honey could sell for 30 yuan at the market. My dad's monthly wage was only 32. Chin Yang came back to the room with me and lay down on the calm. "Bro, come up the mountain with me tomorrow." "Sure. You're not even going to ask what I'm going up there for?" "Ask what?" "You're my brother." I smiled. In my previous life, after I made it big, the first person I brought to the city to enjoy a good life was Chin Yang. This kid never asked too many questions, but he always stood by my side. Another day passed. I got up before dawn. Chin Yang got up too. The two of us scooped up some water and splashed it on our faces a few times, calling it washing up. Each of us gulped down a big bowl of honey water and stuffed a few corn buns into our pockets. Last night we had rushed to make 2 sets of simple protective clothing and stuffed them into our shoulder bag. When we went out, the moon was still hanging in the sky. It wasn't until we were on the road that Chin Yang asked, "Which mountain are we going to?" "Wuming Mountain. The one right behind our village?" "Yeah." He didn't ask any more questions. When we reached the foot of the mountain, I led the way in front, with Chin Yang following behind. After walking a few hundred meters, I saw the place where I'd set the rope snares yesterday. The outermost few snares were empty. My heart skipped a beat. As I went farther in, I heard rustling and struggling coming from deep in the grass. I pushed the grass aside. A brown, furry living thing had its hind leg caught in the snare and was desperately kicking at the ground, trying to break free. A wild rabbit. A lively, kicking wild rabbit. Chin Yang leaned over for a look, and his eyes lit up at once. "Shaosan." I squatted down to undo the snare, my fingers touching the rabbit's warm fur. It was still trembling. I lifted it and weighed it in my hand. It had to be at least 3 gene. I broke into a grin. Turning back to look at Chin Yang, I saw he had the same expression on his face as I did. Tonight, we'd finally get to eat meat. "Shaosan, come over here quick, there's another one here." The 2 brothers checked all around the woods, and the rope snare traps had caught a total of 3 wild rabbits. One of the wild rabbits had grayish-white fur and a long, fat body. It was a bit of an effort to lift with one hand, conservatively estimated at 8 to 9 gene. The other 2 wild rabbits had grayer fur and were slightly smaller, estimated at 5 to 6 gene each. Chin Yang took out the burlap sack he had prepared beforehand and stuffed the wild rabbits inside. "Shaosan, your luck is really good. You actually caught 3 of them." These rope snares of yours are tied kind of differently, aren't they? Qin Yang looked at the hunting knot in his hand, somewhat surprised. Judging from its structure, it was 3 parts cleverer than a traditional hanging snare. Of course, Qin Feng had no idea what Qin Yang was thinking. And at that moment, he was racking his brain trying to remember. Squatting on the ground, his eyes suddenly gleamed. He stood up, patted Qin Yang on the shoulder, and said, "Bro, let's go. I know where there's good stuff." Qin Yang followed behind Qin Feng, and together they found 9 beehives, leaving Qin Yang dumbfounded. Luckily, they had brought protective clothing. Calling it protective clothing was a stretch. It was really just patched together from worn-out clothes and rags. Not as good as real protective clothing, but enough to spare them some pain. Excluding 2 that were in places too dangerous, they dug out 7 beehives in total. If they hadn't truly been unable to carry any more, Qin Feng would have wanted to keep going. These 7 beehives weighed over 300 jin. Together with the 3 wild rabbits, it was more than 2 grown men could carry. Qin Yang improvised a simple sled from local materials, hanging the items on it one by one until it was packed full. "Third brother, how are you so familiar with this nameless mountain?" Qin Feng scratched his head somewhat guiltily. It's just that when I don't have much to do normally, I often wander around in the mountains. After going often enough, of course I got familiar with it." How could Qin Feng dare tell him the truth? Was he supposed to say he knew because of memories from the future? There was no way to explain that clearly, so he decided not to tell anyone, including his family. "You're amazing. Mom and Dad will be thrilled when they find out." Qin Feng secretly calculated it in his heart. Keep some of this honey at home for themselves to eat, and take the rest to the market to sell. Only with money could he go buy a gun, so that in the future, if he ran into any black bears or wild boars in the mountains, he'd have more confidence. Qin Feng had already made up his mind. He could only take it one step at a time. "Third brother, do you still remember Grandpa Zhao in the village? If you're really interested in hunting, you might as well pay him a visit." Qin Feng had some impression of this Grandpa Zhao in his later life. He had met him at his father's funeral. That period was the darkest and most helpless time in Qin Feng's life. Zhao Wenliang was one of the very few people who, when he was at his lowest, reached out and gave him a hand. Grandpa Zhao's full name was Zhao Wenliang. He was a fairly famous hunter in Baishir village, known as Old Zhao Pao, and had some reputation throughout the surrounding villages. In the primeval forests of that era, especially in the more remote and secluded forest farms, fierce wild boars and other beasts often came down from the mountains to attack villagers, causing many deaths and injuries. When such thorny situations arose, the village brigade would invite some hunters to specifically hunt those fierce beasts. And the first person they thought of was Zhao Wenliang. He was a seasoned and experienced hunter, known among his peers as Old Zhao Pao. His marksmanship was godlike, making him one of the best among hunters. "Grandpa Zhao? I'll pay him a visit after I catch a big one later." By big one, he meant large game like red deer or wild boar. What Qin Feng was thinking was, I can't very well visit empty-handed. He was someone who had shown him kindness in his later life. Although Qin Feng didn't consider himself a good person, he still understood repaying kindness. As for anything else, he truly couldn't be bothered. The 2 brothers dragged the sled and had just entered the village when they ran into a few village aunties on the road. Baishir village was only so big if anything happened in anyone's household, and it reached these old aunties' ears. By the time it got passed around again, it might come out all twisted. If you said you were watering the fields, it would spread as you taking a shit in the fields. "Oh my, where are the Qin brothers coming back from today? You actually brought back so many beehives." "That's right. Look, there's stuff in the sack too." Qin Feng shot Qin Yang a look and casually dealt with them by saying, "Auntie Li, we just came down from the mountain and happened to have good luck." TSK, that's a little too lucky. Although she had some doubts about whether what Qin Feng said was true, everyone in Baishir village knew what kind of person Qin San was, a street loafer who wandered the alleys all day long. Qin Feng naturally didn't care what they thought of him. Although the folkways of this era were simple and honest, there was no shortage of jealous, snobbish petty people, so it was best not to flaunt one's wealth. The 2 brothers returned home, and as soon as they entered, Chunmei stepped out when she heard them. Seeing the yard piled full of things, she said in surprise, "You 2 went up the mountain today? So many beehives." As she spoke, she reached out to touch this, and look at that, smiling from ear to ear. To get the honey out of so many beehives, they could only use the traditional method of extracting honey. Press them under a large stone overnight. Following the principle of a modern honey extractor, Qin Feng made a simple wooden barrel extractor and spun the honeycombs out one by one, so the group all joined in to harvest the honey. Chunmei wasn't idle either. She quickly carried several wild rabbits into the side room and started skinning and deboning them. The last time the Qin family ate meat was during the New Year, and ever since Qin Feng was reborn, he had been eating cornmeal buns for days on end, and felt like his mouth had gone bland as hell. Before long, waves of aroma drifted out from the side room, and the smell of meat had everyone drooling. Chunmei brought out a large basin of rabbit stewed with radish, with a thin layer of oil floating on top. There wasn't much grease, but it didn't affect the fresh, sweet taste of the wild rabbit meat. Next door at the Qin family, Qin Dahai was lying on the Kong. Ever since his father beat his backside bloody last time, he hadn't gotten out of bed, and it was only today that it felt a little better. He suddenly craned his neck and sniffed hard toward the window. Who wouldn't be dazed by that meaty aroma? Supporting his waist, Qin Dahai straightened up and carefully got down from the Kong. With every step, the wound on his backside pulled painfully, so he could only shuffle toward the door one tiny step at a time. Knock knock suddenly. There was a knock at the Qin family's gate. Chunmei opened it and saw that it was actually Qin Dahai. "Hizi, it's you. Come in, quick. Are you feeling better?" A big reason Qin Dahai got a brutal beating from his old man was because of Qin Feng. Qin Feng was chewing rabbit meat. When he glanced over, seeing that it was Qin Dahai, he immediately stood up to greet him. "Hizi, perfect timing. We're having meat today." As he spoke, he picked up a big bowl and ladled a heaping bowl of rabbit meat, then placed it in Qin Dahai's hands. Qin Dahai's eyes practically popped out, and he didn't stand on ceremony. He picked up the bowl and took a big gulp of the soup. "Anime, your cooking keeps getting better and better. I bet even the chefs at the big restaurants in the city would feel ashamed in comparison. Go on, stop teasing your auntie. I'm not that capable." The few of them sat around the big bluestone table in the courtyard, chatting and laughing in perfect harmony. In the blink of an eye, evening came. After Qin Igua returned and learned that Qin Feng had gone up the mountain again today and come back loaded down with gains, his expression was clearly better than the last few times. But that was all. He still wouldn't budge on the matter of sending Qin Feng away. Qin Feng's eldest maternal uncle was definitely no good person. In his previous life, it was because of this uncle that Qin Feng suffered a huge setback, but that's beside the point. Seeing that Qin Igua was in a good mood, Qin Feng struck while the iron was hot. "Dad, eldest uncle is a complete scammer. His place isn't suitable for me." "How can you talk like that? He's your uncle. If you've got any ability, then don't make your old man wipe your ass for you." "Dad, I know I used to be a bastard, but a prodigal son who turns back is worth more than gold. Cut the crap. If you stop stirring up trouble, I'll count that as you being filial. Things haven't been peaceful in the mountains lately, so go less." It turned out that a few days earlier, villagers had found signs of activity from an enormous wild boar on Nameless Mountain. According to rumors, the largest boar king among wild boars can weigh up to 1,000 jin. A super boar like that has terrifying attack power. Its long tusks are incredibly sharp. Without exaggeration, they could punch 2 holes even through thinner steel plates. Pao Wanzi specifically refers to a male wild boar. Qin Feng didn't take this news to heart. The next day, Qin Feng still got up at the crack of dawn. In this era, there were no alarm clocks, so people woke up entirely by their body clock, and of course there were few who slept in. After casually eating a little something to fill his stomach, he headed straight for the side room. On the floor stood 5 large earthenware jars, each one filled to the brim with honey, and the capacity of each jar was about 40 jin. There are 200 jin of honey here in total. As soon as he stepped out the door, he saw Qin Dahai waiting at the entrance. "Hizi, why are you up so early too?" Qin Dahai was half a year younger than Qin Feng, tall and strongly built, with tremendous strength. He had followed behind him since childhood and always did whatever Qin Feng said. Though they weren't blood brothers, they were closer than brothers. "Third brother, are we going up the mountain today?" After eating wild rabbit meat here yesterday, Qin Dahai had been left wanting more and was thinking of following Qin Feng up the mountain the next day to hunt a few wild chickens and rabbits. Qin Feng narrowed his eyes slightly, nodded and smiled. "Huh, Hizi, come with me to Yangjiang City today. When we get back, I'll take you into the mountains for something big." So Qin Dahai helped move the honey on the ground, loading the jars onto the handcart one by one, then dragging it to the road junction, where they temporarily rented a tractor at the village entrance and drove it to Yangjiang City. Qin Feng's task today was to take the honey to the market to sell for cash. At the market price of 1.5 yuan per jin, selling it all would bring in 300 yuan. After deducting the cost of the pottery jars and the vehicle rental, he could still make a net profit of over 280 yuan. That counted as a huge sum of money in those days. You should know that Qin Igua's annual salary was only a little over 380 yuan. The vehicle drove for nearly an hour and a half. Not because Baishur village was very far from the market, it was only a little over 30 kilometers, but with the tractor plus the primitive muddy road, the trip became much longer. As soon as the two got off, the street was bustling with people coming and going. Qin Feng had no intention of putting the honey in the state-run store. The price the state-run store offered for honey was only about 1.2 yuan. Haizi, stay here and keep watch first. I'll go inside and have a look around. Based on memories from his later life, Qin Feng knew there was a huge exchange center behind this street, what later generations would call a flea market. As for just how big this market was, it was hard to say. This residential area was made up of alleyways formed by courtyards of all sizes, extending in all directions. Anyone coming here for the first time would absolutely be unable to find their way back the same route. To exaggerate a little, as long as you had money, you could buy anything here. These vendors were highly mobile, making the market very difficult to regulate. Carrying a jar of honey, Qin Feng turned into an alley entrance, twisting and turning his way inside. Just one wall away, the scene inside was vastly different from outside. The crisscrossing stalls inside were arranged in perfect order, and the goods on display were a complete hodgepodge. There were people standing in front of nearly every stall, except for a few whose owners weren't there. Qin Feng found a relatively less busy street corner, set up a stall, and lifted one corner of the pottery jar lid. The distinctive fragrance of honey drifted out faintly. A middle-aged man with a keen sense of smell followed the scent and came over. "Brother, how are you selling this honey?" "Not by the gene." "Brother, this jar has to weigh at least 40 or 50 gene, right?" "That's right. This jar is exactly 40 gene." TSK. One jar isn't much, but at the going market rate, I can only offer this much." As he spoke, the middle-aged man made a hand gesture with his bid. Qin Feng looked up and glanced at it, then slipped both hands back into his pockets and stopped saying anything. This middle-aged man had originally thought Qin Feng was some inexperienced young guy, someone easy to fool, but he hadn't expected this attitude no different from the seasoned old hands. One look and it was obvious he was an old pro. After that, more and more people gathered around. Seeing the timing was right, Qin Feng took a spoon out of his pocket, scooped up a spoonful from the pottery jar. The honey was golden, clear, and free of impurities, stretching into glistening fine threads. One look, and it was obvious it was wild honey. This was called showing the goods, letting people see the quality so they could make an offer. A somewhat chubby man stepped closer. "Brother, this really is good honey. I'll buy it from you at 1.58 yuan, all right?" Qin Feng held out his hand to the chubby-faced man, and the two shook hands, sealing the deal on the spot. As he was leaving, the chubby-faced man said, "Our establishment can only make authentic osmanthus cakes using pure wild honey." Qin Feng immediately caught on. "Big brother, please wait. May I ask your name?" "Lu Xiaofa. People call me Master Pang." "Brother, just for calling me big brother, I ought to make friends with you no matter what." "Master Pang, I just heard you mention your establishment. Would that happen to be Fumin Lu, the one on the street that makes osmanthus cakes?" "That's right. Hey brother, you've had them too?" "I have. How could I miss such a famous pastry? To be honest, I have more than just one jar of wild honey. I wonder if Master Pang still needs more. All of it is the same quality as just now? If so, I'll take it all. Then rest assured, it's the same quality. If it's convenient, I'll take you to have a look." Before long, Qin Feng led Lu Xiaofa out of the alley. From far away across the street, Chen Dehai spotted Qin Feng, with a slightly chubby man following behind him. "Haizi, this is Master Pang. Open all the lids and let Master Pang get a good look at our honey." "All right." Following the order, Chen Dehai turned around and deftly opened the lids one by one. Seeing this, Lu Xiaofa didn't stand on ceremony either, and stepped forward a few paces to inspect the jars up close. After all, this was their first time doing business together. They might call each other brothers, but that didn't stop him from checking the honey's quality. Besides, even real brothers settle accounts clearly. Lu Xiaofa was very satisfied with the honey and readily bought all the rest of Qin Feng's remaining stock. Aside from the first jar, which he bought at 158, Qin Feng sold the remaining honey to Lu Xiaofa at a price of 150 per gene. Seeing how straightforward Qin Feng was, Lu Xiaofa also paid out of his own pocket to treat the two of them to a meal in Fumin Lu's VIP private room. It was Chen Dehai's first time eating at a place like this, and he looked completely like Granny Lu entering the Grandview Garden. The private room was on the third floor, and the three sat around a large round table. The waiter brought out dishes one after another, and Chen Dehai's eyes nearly popped out. He was craving the food terribly. He quietly cast a sidelong glance at Qin Feng, whose expression remained calm and composed, as if he were long used to scenes like this. Lu Xiaofa had been observing the two of them the entire time. He noticed that the young man sitting opposite him gave off an aura completely mismatched with his age from beginning to end. He had only ever felt this kind of presence from his eldest brother. This invisible aura either came from strong self-possession or from having seen so much that it had all become routine. Lu Xiaofa was certain there was no one named Qin Feng around here. Brother Qin, the young are indeed formidable. Come, let me offer you a toast. Master Pang, you're too polite. Qin Feng raised his glass and clinked it with his. He hadn't expected to run into Yangjiang City's future richest man here, which really was quite a coincidence. The current Lu Xiaofa was still far from that level at most. He could be considered a particularly capable local strongman. Lu Xiaofa came from a high-ranking cadre family. His father was a retired senior official, and before retiring, he had held department head-level rank. Though the man had stepped down, his network of connections was still immensely powerful. Take Lu Xiaofa's eldest brother, for example. With his exceptionally strong background, he became Yangjiang City's youngest official. Lu Xiaofa had no desire to enter officialdom and preferred doing business. This Fumanlu was one of his properties. He also had other side businesses under his name reselling big-ticket goods and other items that ordinary people couldn't get their hands on. He had channels for all of it. Lu Xiaofa had a pretty good reputation locally. Both locals and outsiders were willing to work with him. Brother Qin, if you come across any good stuff next time, let your big brother here take a look first. Don't worry, the price will definitely be fair. Lu Xiaofa had already concluded that Qin Feng was a mountain runner. Don't underestimate mountain runners. Many good things from the mountains pass through their hands. Quite a few people in Yangjiang City had made their fortunes through mountain running. Don't worry about that. But right now, I'd like to ask Master Pang for a favor. You want to buy a Type 56? In these times, guns aren't banned, and second-hand guns are especially cheap. That's right, I'm going up the mountain to hunt, so I need a shotgun. I do have a few second-hand ones in stock. Wait here, I'll go get them now. Half an hour later, Qin Feng had a long rectangular object wrapped in burlap tucked under his arm. After finishing his meal, he said goodbye and left. Qin Feng spent 200 yuan to buy a Type 56 semi-automatic and 100 rounds of ammunition, and was also given 50 jin of grain coupons. The price was fairly reasonable. After leaving Fumanlu, Qin Feng didn't hurry home. With 103.2 yuan in his pocket, he naturally went to the state-run store to buy grain. Third brother, we should head back this way. Chen Dehai called out as he chased after Qin Feng. We're not going back yet. Come with me somewhere. The two of them walked along the alley and turned through several side lanes. And when they came out, they saw the entrance to the supply and marketing cooperative. It was packed with people, all lining up to buy things. Qin Feng bought 2 bags of rice and 2 bags of white flour at the cooperative, then took a ride home after making the purchases. As soon as they entered the village, Chen Dehai was pulling a wooden cart, while Qin Feng helped push from behind. The sight drew the attention of villagers working by the roadside, who all stopped what they were doing and looked over. Qin Feng had been a bit too conspicuous these past few days, and everyone in the village thought the Qin family's second son was preparing wedding supplies. A few gossiping women huddled together, whispering among themselves. Qin Feng acted as if he didn't see them and kept pushing the cart, when he happened to run into Yi Chunmei, who was washing clothes by the road. Third son, whose stuff is on this cart? Mom, come give me a hand, it's ours. Yi Chunmei hurriedly steadied the wooden bucket in her hand under one arm and freed up the other to support the goods on the cart. She still wore an expression of disbelief, then turned her head and asked, You sold all the honey at home? Sold it all. And you spent all the money? Spent it. Smack, just as Qin Feng finished speaking, Yi Chunmei slapped him on the back. You little spendthrift, why didn't you save it for your second brother to get married? Mom, that money wasn't enough for my brother to get married anyway. Tomorrow I'll go up the mountain and bring back something big. Then brother can have a lively wedding. You think those big ones up in the mountains are dead, just waiting for you to hunt them? Just wait till you get back and see how your dad scolds you. You brat. Yi Chunmei was so angry with Qin Feng that she was fuming. She dropped the bucket and left. Qin Feng was speechless too. It was as if everyone's impression of him had become fixed. At his age in his previous life, he really had been unreliable, but he wasn't that kind of person now. Full of grievance, he didn't dare say it out loud and could only suffer in silence. Third brother, don't be discouraged. I believe in you. Ever since returning from Yangjiang City, Chen Dehai had felt that the third brother before him was different from before. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, like he had been replaced from the inside. The current third brother radiated a kind of confidence all over, calm in the face of danger and unflustered in handling things. At the Qin family's front gate, Haizi, carry a bag of white flour back home, and take a box of these pastries for your younger sister too. Third brother, you don't treat me like a brother anymore? Qin Feng's casual remark made Chun Dahai instantly jump up in agitation. Realizing Chun Dahai had misunderstood what he meant, he quickly explained, "Haizi, what are you thinking? You and I are family brothers. If I have a bite to eat, so do you. Carry this bag of white flour home, eat your fill tonight, and remember to get up early tomorrow." Qin Feng patted Chun Dahai on the shoulder and nodded to reassure him. Without waiting for Chun Dahai to say anything more, he hoisted a bag of rice onto his shoulder and went into the house. When Qin Igwa got home from work and learned what had happened, he sat on a wooden stump in the courtyard, tapped his pipe twice against the ground by his feet, then packed it with tobacco. Before long, he lit it and took a hard drag with it at his lips. Amid the clouds of smoke, he said, "You're already grown up. As long as you've thought through a way out for yourself in some matters, that's enough. At your age, I already had 2 sons. After Qin Igwa finished speaking, he got up and went back to the inner room. Looking at his father's tall, thin back, a sudden wave of tears welled up in Qin Feng's heart. He really shouldn't keep making his parents worry anymore. Wasn't the reason his second brother still hadn't started a family because their father wanted to treat all his children fairly and had set aside a share of money for him too? Early the next morning, Qin Feng ate 2 white flour steamed buns. As usual, stuffed a few more into his pocket, checked the tools in his shoulder bag again, and quickly headed out. Today there was an extra Type 56 semi-automatic slung across his back. Last night, Qin Feng had polished the gun until it gleamed, and although the body showed some signs of use, overall it looked very new. Chun Dahai was already standing early at the crossroads where they had agreed to meet, with a bag on his back as well. As Qin Feng approached, he casually tossed the white flour steamed buns, still giving off heat from his bag, into Chun Dahai's hands. Qin Feng knew Chun Dahai's habits all too well. He definitely had come out without eating breakfast. While Chun Dahai was eating the buns, Qin Feng finally took a careful look at what was on his back, and it turned out to be a weapon. But not that kind of gun, to be precise. It was an incomparably sharp short spear. The spearhead was pitch black on the surface, rough to the touch and non-reflective, giving off a cold, keen aura. The lower end of the short spear could also be fitted with a wooden pole to turn it into a long spear. Don't underestimate this long spear. Back in the day, hunters in the mountains had killed bears with this very kind of spear. "Third brother, how about it? I really came fully prepared today." As he spoke, he bit off half a bun in one mouthful, his cheeks bulging. "This spear is pretty nice. Since when did your family have something like this?" "I dug it out of the storage shed yesterday. My mom said it belonged to my maternal grandpa." "Hey, and get this, there was even a bow. TSK, too bad it was broken, otherwise I would have brought it out too. Bring that bow over for me to take a look another day." Sure. Qin Feng knew bows quite well in his later life, when hunting in the forest. Other than guns, bows were what he used most. The two of them headed toward Nameless Mountain and reached the mountainside in 2 hours. Along the way, they set several traps near squirrel burrows and weasel dens. Qin Feng wasn't planning to raid any beehives. The reasons were, first, that some time ago they had already emptied out all the beehives on the mountain, and second, the money came in too slowly. The two rested briefly under a towering tree, drank some water, and ate some food to make sure their strength kept up for mountain hunters. The biggest taboo was going into the mountains on an empty stomach. "Third brother, are we still going farther in?" Qin Feng wiped his mouth, his eyes fixed intently on the depths of the dense forest. "Let's go. Just now on the way, I found fresh droppings. This direction is definitely right." "Okay." In Chun Dahai's subconscious, Qin Feng was his real big brother, and he would absolutely listen to whatever he said, right or wrong. Just as he finished speaking, from 300 meters southeast of them came a deep, rough growl that echoed through the entire valley. "Sho, Haizi, stay here and don't move. Hold the spear in your hand." Gripping the Type 56, Qin Feng moved toward the source of the sound. At a distance of about 200 meters, he immediately dropped prone into a clump of weeds. What came into view was a robust adult stag, estimated to weigh over 200 jin, while the other 2 hinds were over 100 jin. The 2 hinds stayed one in front and one behind beside the stag, and from time to time the stag raised its head to look around, extremely vigilant. The antlers on its head displayed its status within the herd. It held its head high and stared in Qin Feng's direction for several seconds before lowering it again. Qin Feng's heart tightened, thinking the stag had spotted him. After making a slight adjustment and steadying his breathing, he decisively raised the Type 56 in his hands, adjusted his sight line, and aimed at the deer herd. Bang! With a loud shot, the stag dropped to the ground. Bang! Another shot followed. One of the does was hit in the thigh as it fled. Hearing the gunshots from far away, Chun Dahai tightened his grip on the long gun in his hands and charged straight over. He didn't want his third brother to get hurt. Carrying his gun, Qin Feng quickly chased after the wounded doe. The injured doe had fallen to the ground, fear showing in its eyes. Before long, Chen Dahai arrived behind Qin Feng. "Haizi, you go deal with this doe." After saying that, Qin Feng walked straight toward the stag lying on the ground, took out the hunting knife, and slashed open the deer's belly with one stroke, removing the entrails and hanging them on a nearby branch. This was the rule mountain hunters revered the mountain god. Then Chen Dahai also roughly processed the doe, using local materials to make a simple sled, and loaded the 2 deer onto it. Every part of a deer is valuable. The 5 treasures of the deer refer to antler velvet, deer penis, deer sinew, deer tail, and deer blood. Holding the hunting knife, Qin Feng skillfully dressed the stag. Chen Dahai, standing to the side, was somewhat shocked. He had never known that his third brother's knife skills had reached such a masterful level. Surprised as he was, his hands didn't stop working. Before long, the 2 deer were fully processed and hung on the sled. As soon as the 2 of them entered the village, word spread like wildfire among the villagers. "Did you see that? I did 2 deer weighing several hundred jin. Do you think they really hunted them themselves? Who says they didn't? It feels like a dream." The ones speaking were the elderly Li couple who lived directly across from Qin Feng. The 2 stood at their own doorway and saw with their own eyes Qin Feng and Chen Dahai drag the 2 deer home. Li Dahua, Qin Aigua, and Chen Zemin were of the same generation, and all 3 had started working at the asbestos factory in the same intake. Logically, their wages should have been about the same, but Li Dahua alone was still drawing an apprentice's wage, only 20 yuan a month. Li Dahua was well known in the village for being stingy, and he also liked to drink a little. Whenever he had nothing to do, he liked to brag. He also loved competing with Qin Aigua as long as he had one thing that put him above the other man. He was satisfied. There weren't many people in the village who truly thought much of him, but he was lucky he had 2 good sons. They were about the same age as Qin Feng and also hunted in the mountains on ordinary days. The elder son was named Li Jiaqing, and the younger was named Li Shiqing. Just last month, the 2 brothers brought back a 300 jin wild boar. Li Dahua had been overjoyed at the time, grinning from ear to ear. It had brought Li Dahua quite a lot of face, especially when compared with the Qin family's youngest son, making his sense of superiority even stronger. A former street loafer had suddenly transformed into a hunter just like his sons, and had even brought back 2 deer this big, which was something they simply couldn't accept. Jealous as they were, the main reason was that neither of them believed Qin Feng could actually hunt anything in the mountains. Meanwhile, back with Qin Feng. As soon as the 2 entered the house, they collapsed from exhaustion, sprawled flat on the floor. While resting, Qin Feng thought to himself that this body stamina was far too poor, and that he would have to exercise more from now on. After resting for a long while, Chen Dahai was now so hungry his chest was sticking to his back. Qin Feng tilted his head and glanced at him. "Haizi, want some roast venison?" The moment Chen Dahai heard that, his whole back straightened, and he nodded repeatedly. The 2 got up to prepare, dividing the work between them. Qin Feng gripped the skinning knife, and with a few swift motions, in the blink of an eye, a perfectly intact deer hide lay before them. This scene happened to be witnessed by Yi Chunmei, who had just returned from. The moment she came in, her mouth never closed, until Qin Feng patiently explained things to her, and only then did she finally calm down. The venison sizzled on the iron griddle, dripping with oil, its rich aroma filling the air. Chen Dahai was already starving and couldn't wait any longer. Not caring that it was hot, he grabbed a steaming piece of venison and stuffed it into his mouth, only to have to toss it around in his mouth as if stir-frying it again from the burn. The group ate their fill to their heart's content. Qin Feng gave one of the does to Chen Dahai, but Chen Dahai refused flatly at first, feeling that he hadn't really contributed that much. Having lived through 2 lifetimes, Qin Feng easily persuaded Chen Dahai with just a few words. Qin Feng didn't think he was being especially generous, but he understood one thing clearly. If you go hunting in the mountains alone, both the danger level and the success rate are far worse than when 2 people work together. Chen Dahai had been tagging along behind Qin Feng ever since they were little kids, so there was no need to say more about the brotherly bond between them. In the blink of an eye, it was evening at the Qin family's courtyard. Chen Zemin brought his family of 4 over to the Qin house as well, and that night they set a whole table of venison dishes there. The lively atmosphere was comparable to the new year. "Are the 3 Qin brothers home?" A burst of urgent knocking came from outside the courtyard. Qin Feng was closest to the gate, so he got up to open it. When he opened the door, he saw Zhao Ergus standing there. "Brother Qin, I heard you bagged a big one today?" As he spoke, his eyes drifted toward the courtyard, and he unconsciously swallowed. Qin Feng wasn't stupid. It was obvious this fool at the door had caught the scent of the meat and shamelessly wanted to come mooch a meal. So he deliberately pretended not to understand and asked coldly, "Brother Ergu, what brings you to me today?" The moment Qin Feng thought of the culprit who had nearly gotten him crippled in the ancestral hall, standing right in front of him, his teeth itched with hatred. Once he got the chance, he was definitely going to get revenge. "It's just that I had a brother like you on my mind. So today I brought you something good. Take a look." Following Chun Ergu's gaze, Qin Feng saw a back basket by the corner of the wall. Inside the basket were 5 puppies. Black, yellow, and white. Qin Feng leaned in to inspect the puppies. "You're trying to sell me dogs?" "Of course. In 1 month, aren't you going up Beast Mountain? I heard it's pretty creepy up there, so wouldn't it be great to bring 2 dogs along for company?" But before Qin Ergu could continue, he was kicked to the ground the very next second. Qin Dahai had appeared at the doorway at some point, and the instant he spotted Qin Ergu, he didn't hesitate at all before kicking him. "Erguzi, I haven't even settled the score with you yet, and you actually dare come to my door? I'll kick you to death." Qin Feng made a token attempt to stop him. Qin Ergu had barely had time to get up from the ground before Qin Dahai followed up with another kick. All told, he got kicked about a dozen times. "Ouch. Ouch, you're beating someone to death. Help." It wasn't until Qin Igua heard the commotion and came out that this farce was stopped. Then he invited Qin Ergu into the house and even set good food and drink in front of him. Qin Ergu didn't care in the least about that bit of bruising. He stared fixedly at the venison in the bowl and started wolfing it down. Qin Dahai sat to the side, grinding his teeth in anger as he watched. And if the elders hadn't been there, the wooden stool in his hand probably would have been smashed right into Qin Ergu's face. Qin Feng, meanwhile, was still at the doorway examining the puppies in the back basket, and he noticed that 2 of the puppies were somewhat different. An ordinary person basically wouldn't be able to tell without close observation. Once he had an idea in mind, he got up and went back into the courtyard. "Brother Ergu, I want all the puppies in your basket. Name your price." Qin Ergu, who had been eating with his head down, paused. "We're all brothers, easy, easy." Then he wiped his mouth with his pitch-black sleeve. "These puppies are all fine breeds, no worse than mixed breeds. Buying them is definitely a bargain." As he spoke, he held up one finger. "Mixed" refers to a hybrid breed between domestic dogs and wild dogs. Qin Dahai had long been unable to hold back his fists. In a few strides he walked up to Qin Ergu, grabbed him by the collar with one hand without another word, and said viciously, "You black-hearted bastard. 50 cents each? Are you crazy for money?" This time Qin Feng reached out and stopped Qin Dahai. "Brother Ergu, then we'll go with the price you quoted." After speaking, Qin Feng reached into his pants pocket. "Here's a total of 2 yuan and 5 jiao. Keep it safe." Zhao Ergu was a bit stunned on the spot. 50 cents for each puppy wasn't cheap either, and seeing Qin Feng agree to pay so readily, he instantly began to wonder if he'd quoted too low. Just as he was thinking of changing his price, Qin Dahai lunged in front of him in one stride, raised his hand, and clenched his fist. Qin Feng seemed to have long expected Zhao Ergu to go back on his word, so this time he let Qin Dahai rush ahead to give him a warning. Zhao Ergu nodded awkwardly, quickly stuffed the money into his pocket, and before leaving shamelessly swiped a big chunk of venison. Qin Feng casually shut the front gate tight, picked up the back basket, and went into the house. Qin Igua couldn't figure out why his son had suddenly bought so many puppies. In these times, people themselves couldn't get enough to eat, so where would there be extra grain to feed dogs? He had even spent 2 yuan and 5 jiao to buy 5 puppies, and his face was full of displeasure. "Third son, buying so many puppies, have you thought about the consequences?" Qin Feng sat down at the table. "Dad, come take a look. What's different about this dog?" Hearing Qin Feng suddenly say this, Qin Igua became curious, took the puppy from his hands, and examined it carefully. "Hiss, there's something off about this dog. Zemin, you take a look too." Chun Zemin took the dog and lifted up the puppy's front paw. "Shaosen, did you already notice it?" The two exchanged a glance, both wearing expressions of sudden realization. "That's right, this dog is a wolf cub." Qin Feng didn't know where Zhao Ergu had gotten a wolf cub from, but the fool had actually sold it off. Hopefully he won't cry with regret later. Qin Feng looked at the wolf cub in his hands. Its appearance was somewhat dog-like, and he felt a bit puzzled too. But a wolf cub was a good thing. When fully grown, an adult wolf is larger than a domestic dog or wild dog, with a keener sense of smell, more developed hearing, and is especially good at running fast and over long distances. Qin Feng had already figured out how to train this wolf cub to make it the lead dog in the hunting pack in the future. The lead dog is the one that takes the lead among the pack. Meanwhile, on the other side, early the next morning, at the Li family home across from the Qin family, Li Jiaqing sat in the yard, holding a hatchet in both hands against the whetstone on the ground, carefully sharpening the blade. Li Shiqing had just come out of the house and already had his shoulder bag on his back. Brother, can that kid Hu Ronghuai be trusted? He wouldn't dare not to. If Hu Ronghuai dares to make things up, I won't let him off. Hu Ronghuai has some kinship ties with the Li family. He is the younger brother of the husband of the Li family's eldest daughter. He is a forest ranger at the nearby No. 4 forest farm, and the news about the big wild boar on Wuming Mountain originally came from him. Hu Ronghuai also sold the Li brothers the exact location of the big wild boar, and the Li brothers paid 5 yuan for the information. So how could they feel good about it? Early this morning, they were sharpening their blades and preparing to go up the mountain. The Li brothers were eager to go up the mountain to hunt the wild boar, actually intending to suppress Qin Feng, who had recently been in the limelight. The old man and old woman at home had also brought it up again, leaving them feeling upset. Unexpectedly, even the good-for-nothing who could never amount to anything managed to bring back 2 deer. The 2 brothers kept going without stopping all the way into the mountains. They walked deep into the dense forest for quite a while. When Li Jiaqing reached a patch of thorny brush and reached down to grab a handful of black, mushy stuff from beneath the grass, he brought it to his nose and sniffed it, and a foul stench filled his nostrils. Hu Ronghuai wasn't wrong, it really had run this way. Li Jiaqing carefully examined the traces nearby, then continued deeper along the valley. Before they had even gone 500 meters, Li Jiaqing suddenly stopped. Seeing this, Li Shiqing also crouched low. Shizi, in the grass ahead. Li Shiqing narrowed his eyes and looked into the distance, where a tuft of black bristles was stirring in the grass. Even from far away, they could hear a series of snorting sounds, huff huff, and it was making quite a racket. Brother, this boar's probably over 700 jin. Li Shiqing pulled a traditional bow from behind his back. It was a recurve bow. The 2 men continued to crouch low, moving with extreme caution. Shizi, let's split up and flank it from both sides. Wait for my signal. Li Jiaqing immediately circled around from behind in another direction, finding a spot on higher ground. In his hand was a boar spear, its tip made of steel with a 2-pronged fork, the shaft 7-8 chi long and weighing about 8 jin. Not far away, the wild boar was leisurely foraging, completely unaware that danger was approaching. Seeing that the moment was right, Li Jiaqing gave a whistle. The boar in the grass seemed to sense something was wrong and lifted its head to look around. With its massive body, a pair of long, sharp tusks, and black bristles standing erect along its back, it was terrifying just to look at. If an ordinary person came across a super-sized wild boar like this in the mountains, they would only pray that it didn't notice them, then quietly slip away. But the Li brothers were eager to give it a try, having hunted a 300 jin wild boar last time had given them confidence. And they believed this time was a sure thing too. Before long, Li Shiqing heard the whistle, took a deep breath, and fixed his gaze on the distant target. Holding his breath, he pulled the bowstring to its fullest in one go. Whoosh, the arrow struck the boar's hind leg, but in the blink of an eye, it was shaken loose and fell off. Wild boars were fierce and quick-tempered to begin with, and this arrow hadn't gone in deep, but instead only provoked it, making it buck wildly as it locked onto the person who had fired. Then the boar completely flew into a rage and charged straight toward Li Shiqing. Li Shiqing grabbed another arrow and kept aiming and shooting, but perhaps in his panic, both shots missed. Seeing the boar charging at him, he immediately sensed things were bad and turned to run at once, only to be sent flying by the boar the next second. He crashed heavily to the ground, his vision went black, and he fainted. Just as the boar was about to continue its attack, a steel ox horn fork stabbed into its rump. All of this happened in the space of a lightning flash. Li Jiaqing watched his younger brother get flung away by the boar with his own eyes. He rushed over desperately, but in the end, he was still a step too late. Perhaps startled by that stab, the boar actually turned and ran. Li Jiaqing didn't dare go after it and hurriedly turned to check on Li Shiqing instead. He felt for his breathing and finally let out a sigh of relief. But there was a deep gash on the inside of Li Shiqing's thigh, cut so deep the bone was visible, and blood was pouring out. Li Jiaqing tore off a piece of cloth from his clothes, gave him emergency bandaging, then hoisted him onto his back and hurried down the mountain. Baishir village, the Qin family courtyard. Qin Feng was sawing wood with a rasping creak, preparing to make a fence. Keep these 5 dogs penned in one place for now, and slowly train them into hunting dogs later. He was thinking of making a trip to Elder Zhao's house as a seasoned old hunter. He surely kept a few hunting dogs by his side. Learning from him definitely couldn't go wrong. Just then, Chen Dehai walked in holding a bow. Third brother, busy huh? Have you heard about the Li brothers? Qin Feng still kept his head down working hard. Without even raising his head, he had no mind to care about unimportant people and matters. If you've got something to say, say it. If you've got, let it out. Don't be so hasty, third brother. My mother said. The Lee brothers went up the mountain to hunt today and broke their legs in a fall. TSK. Supposedly they ran into a pig god. Then again, just the two of them daring to go up the mountain to hunt that thing, weren't they just asking to die? Pig god refers to a giant wild boar weighing over 500 gene. Was that pig god killed? Qin Feng stopped what he was doing and asked. No way. With their family's usual behavior. If they'd killed it, wouldn't they be setting off firecrackers at the village entrance to announce it to the whole world? True enough. Don't mind it so much, and stop gloating. Qin Feng was dismissive of the villagers' gossip and opinions about him. And he wasn't exactly warm toward the villagers either. But there was one thing. His principle in life was that he would never kick someone when they're down or stab them in the back. Qin Feng then noticed the bow in Chun Dahai's hand. Is this the bow you mentioned last time? As he spoke, he stepped forward and took the bow. Judging by its appearance, it was a traditional Mongolian horn bow. The siyas and limbs were made of tumu wood and water buffalo horn, and it felt solid and substantial in the hand. Unfortunately, the bowstring was broken. The main materials used to make traditional Mongolian horn bows are usually water buffalo horn or argali horn. These horns, because of their toughness and good resilience, are very suitable for making the bow body. Haizi, bring this bow and come with me to Elder Zhao's house. Chun Dahai asked no further questions. Since his third brother said they were going to Elder Zhao's house, he surely had his reasons. Qin Feng carried a deer leg and half a sack of rice, about 20 plus gene. Before heading out, he gave Yi Chunmei a few instructions, then left the house. Zhao Wenliang's home was several li from the village entrance. The two of them walked for more than half an hour before arriving. Standing in front of the gate of an earthen house, they saw the scenery around it was tranquil, backed by the mountain from a feng shui perspective. This was a very good location. Knock knock, Elder Zhao, are you home? Seeing no response, Chun Dahai called out again. After quite a long while, a reply finally drifted slowly from inside the house. Zhao Wenliang opened the front gate, and seeing that the visitors were actually two juniors he had never met before, he grew puzzled. You are? Standing at the door, Qin Feng first introduced himself, then respectfully presented the gifts he had brought with both hands. Upon hearing that he was Qin Aigua's son, Zhao Wenliang looked a bit more kindly and politely invited them inside. How has your father been lately? Thank you for your concern, Uncle Zhao. My dad's as strong as an ox. That's good. You didn't come all this way today just to see these old bones of mine, did you? Qin Feng rubbed his nose and said awkwardly. We did come specifically to see you, and also to take a look at your hunting dogs. To see the hunting dogs? My dogs are very fierce. Fine, I'll take you over to have a look. Zhao Wenliang got up and led Qin Feng and the other man to the backyard. Next to the woodshed was the dog kennel. As soon as the pack of hunting dogs caught the scent of strangers, they began barking wildly and jumping high. If not for the dog chains around their necks, they would have already broken free and torn into the strangers. With one shout from Zhao Wenliang, the hunting dogs instantly quieted down, and a few of them even wagged their tails. One of them, a tall, sturdy dog with jet black fur, still bared its teeth in an attacking posture when it saw Qin Feng and the others. Xiaohe, sit. Zhao Wenliang gave a soft reprimand, and the black dog actually obediently sat down. This Xiaohe is the lead dog of the pack. Once it's trained well, the other dogs become much easier. From feeding methods to training techniques. He explained everything almost without holding anything back. Qin Feng listened very carefully and firmly committed it all to memory. Zhao Wenliang hadn't originally planned to tell Qin Feng so much, but on second thought, one feels obliged after accepting another's hospitality and gifts. During this time, Chun Dahai also handed the bow in his hand to Zhao Wenliang to take a look. This bow really is a fine one. If you trust me, leave it here with me for now, and I'll repair it for you later. This conversation went on until evening. Zhao Wenliang wanted Qin Feng and the others to stay for dinner before leaving. Seeing that he couldn't politely refuse, Qin Feng stayed with Chun Dahai for dinner. Before leaving, they agreed on the next visit. Just as Qin Feng and Chun Dahai arrived at the front door, they heard people talking in the courtyard. The two pushed the door open and entered, and 3 people were sitting in the middle of the yard, all turning to look at Qin Feng and the two of them at once. One of them was Qin Aigua, and the other 2 were village chief Hu Dequan and He Weilong, director of No. 4 Forest Farm. The 3 seemed to be discussing something. You're back? Your mother said you went to Elder Zhao's house? That old fellow is still in good health, right? He's doing well. Hai and I are going inside first, you all talk. Qin Aigua gave a slight nod. As soon as the 2 entered the house, they saw Yi Chunmei lying on the heated brick bed, her face streaked with tears. Mom, what's wrong? Yi Chunmei had originally been biting her lower lip, trying hard to hold back her tears. But the moment she heard Qin Feng's voice, her tears burst forth like a breached dam, flowing nonstop. Qin Feng sat down by the edge of the Kong and asked again, "Third son, your younger sister's husband had his foot bitten by wild wolves in the mountains yesterday. What will happen to our fourth girl in the future? She's even pregnant." Sob, sob, sob. As soon as Qin Feng heard this, his expression immediately darkened. The Qin family had 3 sons and 1 daughter. And before she was married off, whenever there was good food or fun things at home, she was always the first to get them. The whole family treasured and doted on her. Back when their parents married fourth sister to Deng Jiawei, it was precisely because he was an employee of number 4 Forest Farm and had a stable job. Just as Qin Feng wanted to ask a few more questions, Qinagua came in. "Third son, ferocious beasts have been running rampant at number 4 Forest Farm lately, and quite a few people have been injured. Village Chief Hu and the others specially came to borrow your gun." Qin Feng glanced at Qinagua, then went back out into the courtyard. He looked at Hu Dequan with icy eyes and said nothing. Hu Dequan felt a chill run down his back under that stare and was stunned. Was this really the same Qin Third he knew? He felt utterly unfamiliar. The Qin Third before him radiated a cold, chilling aura all over. An invisible pressure that made him afraid to even breathe too deeply. Coming to the Qin family today to borrow the gun didn't really have much to do with him. Whether he showed up or not wouldn't affect the matter. But He Weilong seemed to have anticipated it in advance and had already come to his door carrying generous gifts, asking him to act as a mediator. He should never have accepted those things. Regretting it now was too late. He Weilong beside him wore much the same expression and forced himself to speak. "Brother Qin Third, don't worry, we won't borrow your gun for nothing. 2 yuan a day, plus 50 gene oil ration coupons. And we'll provide our own bullets. What do you think? Can't lend the gun." "Ah well." Hu Dequan and He Weilong exchanged a helpless look and stood up to leave. They were in a hurry to go borrow from someone else. But just as they reached the doorway, Qin Feng added another sentence. "I can't lend out the gun, but I will bring it to the forest farm." "When is the next scheduled group hunt?" "The day after tomorrow at 8 in the morning." He Weilong finally let out a sigh of relief and hurriedly thanked He Dequan before leaving. Their forest farm was a collective forest farm, and compared with state-owned and private forest farms, they did not have such an ample supply of guns. There was another point. On the surface, He Weilong was borrowing a gun, but in reality, he was inviting someone in a roundabout way. In the blink of an eye, the day after next arrived. Qin Feng packed his things, slung his gun over his back, and went out early with Qin Dahai. Forest Farm number 4 was about 20 li from Baishir village. Qin Feng rode Qinagua's 28-inch bicycle, carrying Qin Dahai as they sped all the way there. More than an hour later, they reached the forest farm. After parking the bicycle, the two went straight to the guard post at the entrance of the forest farm. Watching over the guard room was a dark-skinned old man of about 50 years old. Seeing that Qin Feng and Qin Dahai were both young and were carrying guns and shoulder bags, he assumed they were just like the young hunters from the previous few days, recklessly coming to try their luck. He did not stop them much and let the 2 of them into the woods. Before going in, Qin Feng deliberately asked the old gatekeeper for some useful information. The 2 headed in the direction the old man pointed out. When they reached the place where the accident had happened last time, Qin Feng crouched down and looked around carefully. Judging from the traces at the scene, there must have been a very intense struggle at the time. Qin Feng noticed plum blossom-shaped footprints on the ground, and there was more than one. Based on the chaotic footprints at the scene, there were quite a few of them. In the grass, they found traces of wild wolves living there, as well as the remains of animals that had been eaten. Not far away, faint wolf howls could also be heard. The 2 continued following those tracks all the way to the northernmost part of the forest farm. The elevation here was somewhat higher. Qin Feng looked around, then fixed his gaze on the small hillside behind Qin Dahai. "Haizi, let's go to the mountaintop opposite." From the mountaintop opposite, the northern forest farm could be seen very clearly. In this deep forest, wild wolves had become a serious plague, causing the forest farm considerable losses every year. Especially this year, the number of wild wolves was absurdly high. They came out in groups to hunt for food, even in broad daylight. As a result, many cattle and sheep raised by nearby villages were bitten to death, and quite a few forest farm workers were also attacked. So whenever wolf infestations peaked, the forest farm would hire some hunters to go into the mountains and hunt the wolves. Qin Dahai imitated a wolf's howl to lure the pack over. A Wu Qin Feng lay hidden in concealment, ready to shoot at any moment. Before long, Qin Feng heard a response from the wolves. Although the sound was far away, it showed that a wolf pack had already noticed the direction where Qin Feng was. Qin Feng and Qin Dahai had long since made their hunting preparations to guard against a sudden appearance by the wolf pack. Qin Feng lay in ambush in a patch of woods with a relatively open view. Chun Dahai continued imitating animal calls to draw the wolves' attention. The woods were very quiet. Qin Feng did not spot the wolf pack. Holding the Type 56 in his hands, he stayed alert at all times and did not dare let his guard down. Qin Feng knew very well that once wolves discover prey, they stay quiet. They quietly moved closer this way. Sure enough, not long later, in the grass 150 meters directly in front of Qin Dahai, a wolf pack came running this way at high speed. Seeing this, Qin Feng immediately clicked off the safety on the Type 56. He held his breath and waited for the wolves to come closer. This was a small squad of 5 wolves. Qin Feng aimed at the first wolf and fired. Bang! It was dropped instantly. The pack had not yet realized the danger and did not flee. Qin Feng immediately fired a second shot. Bang! Another wolf was hit and let out miserable cries. One of the other wild wolves even seemed to want to save its companion. It seemed to want to drag it away. Qin Feng fired a third shot and hit it. Bang! At this point, 3 wolves in the pack were dead on the ground, and one more was still not fully dead, lying there howling in agony. Qin Feng fired another shot, ending its suffering. Only when he walked closer did he realize one wolf had escaped. Qin Feng looked at the 4 dead wolf carcasses and fell silent. Meanwhile, the encirclement hunting team had just entered the mountain. He Weilong and Zhao Wenliang walked at the very front of the group, and both had just heard gunshots from the mountain. This hunting team consisted of 9 people, basically calling in all the hunters from the nearby settlements who had guns. Could it be that someone had gone up the mountain to hunt first? He Weilong turned and asked the gatekeeper beside him who had gone up the mountain this morning. After learning that 2 young men had gone up the mountain ahead of time, they were still guessing who it was. Director, wasn't someone from Baishir village supposed to bring a gun over? Haven't seen him at this hour. Looks like he was scared out of his wits and didn't dare come. Huh? Zhu Yuangang from Shibei village bit a weed root at the corner of his mouth and said sarcastically. Every village usually has a few local thugs like this, and Zhu Yuangang was exactly that kind of person. Relying on the few hunting dogs he raised, he had mixed into the encirclement hunting team. The 2 villages were not far apart to begin with. A few years earlier, Qin Feng and Zhu Yuangang had some conflicts. And hearing that Qin Feng would be coming this time, he eagerly came to watch the show. He Weilong glanced at the team behind him and indeed did not spot Qin Feng or Qin Dahai, frowning slightly. The time is about right. Everyone get ready. Let's head up the mountain. Master Zhao, how many teams should we split into? Zhao Wenliang wore a dogskin hat and had a hunting rifle slung over his shoulder, raising his head to glance at the dense forest in the distance and the endless mountain range. We can split our 9 people into 3 teams. Any more would be unsafe. Let the hunting dogs lead people into the mountain first, and we'll outflank from 3 directions. On the hillside, Qin Feng and Qin Dahai were cleaning up the wild wolf carcasses on the ground. A strong smell of blood filled the air. Qin Feng walked to the base of a birch tree thick enough for 3 people to wrap their arms around, where a striking claw mark on the tree caught his eye. Could there be a black blind here in this forest? Black blind refers to a black bear. Alertness rose in Qin Feng's heart. Haizi, leave the wolves aside for now and come here quickly. Qin Dahai came to the base of the big birch tree and measured the mark with his hand. Third brother, this thing's paw isn't small. Most likely it's a black blind. Qin Feng then looked on the ground and found several animal footprints, some shallow and some deep. Not all footprints are useful, some are too old, and the prey has already run far away, making tracking meaningless. The marks left in front of them were about 30 centimeters long and 18 centimeters wide, with 5 claws at the front, close-set toes, and clear claw prints. Based on this, he judged that there was definitely a black blind nearby. Bang bang, continuous gunshots came from another direction in the mountain forest, accompanied by the barking of hunting dogs chasing prey. Qin Feng and Qin Dahai did not continue tracking the black blind, but instead turned to rendezvous with the encirclement hunting team. With such a big commotion, the black blind had probably already run far away. He figured there was no need to waste more time, but the news about the black blind still had to be reported to the forest farm. When the 2 reached the wooden cabin in the forest halfway up the mountain, they found 2 hunting dogs' corpses laid out on the ground outside. On closer look, these hunting dogs looked more like domesticated native dogs. Qin Feng entered the wooden cabin. Inside, a hunter with an injured arm was tending to his wound. Behind him stood 2 more people, He Weilong and Zhao Wenliang. Brother Qin-san, when did you arrive? He Weilong said with a hint of surprise, having originally thought that Qin-san, just as Zhu Yuangang had said, had been scared off and dared not come. Director I'm a man of my word. I just got here a bit earlier than you. Please lend me a sled. There are 4 wild wolf carcasses on the mountaintop that need to be dragged down. Zhao Wenliang behind, He Weilon stepped forward, his eyes gleaming. Xiao-san, you killed 4 wolves? His gaze swept over Qin Feng and saw a Type 56 slung over his back. Zhao Wenliang pressed on with a few more questions. And Qin Feng didn't hide anything, explaining everything plainly and in full detail. The 2 men were stunned on the spot. You had to know that the hunting team led by Zhao Wenliang had just been hunting a small pack of 3 wolves, and it had taken a great deal of effort. As it happened, they had lost 2 hunting dogs, and 1 hunter had injured his arm because of it. Truly, you don't realize the difference until you compare. Zhao Wenliang could still understand it. After all, he was nearly 50, so his physical strength certainly couldn't compare with Qin Feng and Chen Dehai's, though he had the advantage of rich experience. But the hunters in the other teams were all 5 or 6 to 8 or 9 years older than Qin Feng, and logically should have had more hunting experience. None of them could guarantee they could hit the mark with every shot. Zhu Yuangang was about the same generation as Qin Feng, and he was even less comparable. Outside the wooden cabin, Chen Dehai crouched down and felt the dead dogs on the ground. He discovered that one of the hunting dogs was still breathing and hadn't fully died. He shouted to the 2 hunters not far away, "This dog isn't dead yet. Hurry and save it." The hunter on the left had a scar on his face, glanced at Chen Dehai, and casually spat the grass root from his mouth to the side. "What are you yelling for? Can't you see this dog is already rolling its eyes back? Not even an immortal could save it. Might as well take it home and stew it for hot pot." Chen Dehai sprang to his feet and rushed in front of the scar-faced man, grabbing him by the collar. "Damn it! Are you even human? What a waste of this dog. You bastard deserve to be chased and bitten by those wolves. Let go of me, or believe it or not, I'll swing an axe and kill you." Chen Dehai and the scar-faced man were at each other's throats. Chen Dehai didn't tolerate people like this without another word. He slammed his head straight into him. Blood instantly spurted from the scar-faced man's nose, and he clutched it with both hands. The hunter who was with him had stepped forward to break it up when the argument first started. But once Chen Dehai got serious, his hand went straight to the hunting knife at his waist. "What are you doing? Did I invite you here to fight your own people? If you have that much energy, go up the mountain and bring down a few more wolves for me." He Weilon, Zhao Wenliang, and Qin Feng heard the argument outside, and all came out. "Qin-san here just told me an important piece of news. There's also a black bear on this mountain." He Weiland's forest farm still had to keep operating, and there was still more than half of this quarter's target quota left unfinished, so shutting down work was impossible. After a while, He Weilon called all the hunters to the wooden cabin in the forest on the mountainside to hold a brief meeting. "We still need to ask everyone to help hunt this bear. Don't worry, what I originally promised still stands. If anyone kills this bear, I'll add another 50 gene of grain coupons and 5 yuan as a thank you bonus, and the bear will belong to him as well. What do you think?" As soon as He Weilon finished speaking, the hunters below could no longer sit still. Voices of discussion rose one after another. At this moment, Zhu Yuangang raised his hand and asked, "Director He, that sounds nice, but only if I live long enough to spend it. I'm out. Also, 2 hunting dogs died while I was hunting wolves today, so you have to compensate me as we agreed." Chen Dehai's face immediately darkened as he looked toward Zhu Yuangang. Only then did he realize he had misunderstood the scar-faced brothers from this morning, because only 2 hunting dogs had died in the hunting party today. Qin Feng noticed the fierceness in Chen Dehai's eyes. Plus, he had just gotten into a fight with someone outside, and I thought he was feeling upset. I patted him on the shoulder and whispered, "Heizi, now's not the time to fight. If you're really pissed off, settle the score with him after this is over." Chen Dehai turned his head and nodded at Qin Feng. After some discussion, it was decided that 7 people would stay, and the rest took their things and left. They split into 3 teams. Qin Feng and Chen Dehai were one team. The scar-faced man and his brother were one team. Zhao Wenliang and the remaining 2 formed the 3rd team. It was around noon. Qin Feng and Chen Dehai ate the dry rations they had brought in their shoulder bags, just making do. After eating their fill and resting for a moment, they geared up and set out. This forest was simply too vast, so the teams could only spread out to search for the black bear. Qin Feng and Chen Dehai continued searching the northern area they had visited that morning. Qin Feng had analyzed it in his mind. The north had lots of shrubs, with plenty of berries growing there, and there was also a small creek nearby. Black bears like to eat honey, berries, and fish, and they are excellent at catching fish. The moment Qin Feng thought about hunting the black bear with his own hands, his heart started pounding uncontrollably, and he couldn't calm it down. He himself couldn't tell whether he felt more nervous or more afraid. In his later life, Qin Feng had nearly died on the spot while hunting a brown bear abroad, which had left a considerable shadow on his mind. Chen Dahai had a pheasant he had shot by the roadside slung over his back and held a sharp short spear in his hand. He and Qin Feng walked one in front of the other, constantly alert to any movement around them. Third brother, this isn't going to work if we keep searching like this. It's almost dark. Don't worry, I'm looking for a suitable place to set a trap. Qin Feng stood in a relatively flat spot, cut several wooden stakes nearby, making 4 of them thicker and sharpening their bottoms to a point, then used the back of an axe to pound them into the soil. Qin Feng planned to make a falling rock trap, using a tripwire to trigger the mechanism. The tripwire had to be set directly beneath the heavy object. The moment the prey stepped in, it would be a one-hit kill. Of course, with something the size of a black bear, that would be hard to achieve. Qin Feng had never intended to rely on this trap to kill the bear anyway, but to lure it over with bait and hold it up for a while, making sure he had enough time to fire his gun. After making the preparations, Qin Feng and Chen Dahai hid in the nearby grass.